Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Green, and this is my vlog from lecture that we had on September 10th, 2021. And in regards to the questions that I had posted in the Chapter 3 survey, I do know for certain that you answered one. My question was asking if the mean, median, and mode that we were going over in Chapter 3 was the same type of mean, median, mode that we went over whenever I was in high school, which it was. I was just tripped up by the idea of it being the arithmetic mean. I honestly didn't know there was a difference between the arithmetic mean and the geometric mean, but the more you know. So that question was answered. And then for the rest of the lecture, we went over the 3 M's. We went over the mean, median, and mode. And to be honest, a lot of it kind of felt like review, just an advanced form of review, because I knew what all the topics were from high school, but in high school we didn't have all these fancy equations and symbols that made everything seem a bit more confusing than I honestly thought it should be. But you did say that statistics was just making things much more complicated than they needed to be. But in class, we went over an example of the number of pets that we the students had to make, or to find out what the mean of the average amount of pets that the person had. And I had mentioned how outliers greatly impact the mean and how it can make it much more extreme than necessary. Say, for instance, you said, what if someone had 8,000 pets and the rest of our numbers were all below the number 8? And so putting that in there makes the mean much more extravagant than it would actually need to be. I did understand the introduction of the equation. I can't remember exactly what the capital E was called, but I remember that it was, the sum of the mean. And so learning the new formula for the average mean was a little bit confusing, but I also understood at least what it was in theory, and I'm sure with a little more practice it really won't be that big of a deal. We also went over the deviation, and I do remember standard deviation as well from high school. The only thing that I didn't really remember necessarily, or I guess it was more thoroughly explained in this class, was the standard deviation equation, or the capital E equals, or multiplied by x minus the mean squared, gives you the minimum sum of the standard deviation in its smallest value. So that was a bit new, but I also did remember that the standard deviation was truly representative of the data, or the mean. Going on to the median, we did learn 3 new equations, or 3 new ways to find the median. And honestly, whenever we were doing it, I was kind of like, couldn't you just, count it down, go from start at the lowest and then from the highest and then just kind of meet in the middle? But then, I realized how inconvenient that would be, say if you had like 100 numbers or 1,000 or a million, how many ever you got from a set of data. And so it does make sense that we would have different equations. You taught us the sort and count method, the percentile, and the CRF ogive. And honestly, I saw how they would all be beneficial. I think the sort and count was the easiest for me, just because it made the most sense in my head. But the other ones, obviously, they do have their merits as well. But you did mention that they could lead to different values depending on which method you did use. We also went over the trimean, which I didn't realize that's what it was called, but I did remember how if a mean is lower or greater than the median, how it did affect the skew of a graph. And then we also briefly went over quartiles and the mode. And I did remember quartiles from high school as well. I just think we maybe did like box plots or something like that maybe for the quartiles. And so doing the Q1, Q2 addresses was a bit new to me, but I did understand why Q1 was put over 4 and Q3 was put over 4, and how Q2 needed to be put over 2 because that was the more important data since it was the median. And the mode, of course, is the easiest, but it's also the most, I don't want to say unreliable because the mean is kind of unreliable whenever you have outliers, but it doesn't really seem like it is the best way to record the central tendency of a data. But this has been my vlog from Thursday's lecture. You did answer my questions, and my question was honestly probably kind of redundant. I probably should have just looked up what the arithmetic mean meant, and then it really wouldn't have been an issue. And then, of course, we went over the 3 M's, and you explained a lot of new ways to incorporate old learning techniques to find the mean, median, and mode. And so I think with a little bit of practice, I should be all good. Thank you. Have a good weekend.